Like many young boys in the 70s, Dirk got fascinated by motorsport. It was an unknown world for him and a great attraction. But how to get into that without financial support? So one day Dirk bought a go-kart and practiced a lot. And on his first race, he finished third. And this result got him to be supported by the Belgian importer Breunings, for the one that know, it's in Brussels. Dirk decided to go to UK, and he lived for a year in his van in the paddocks of the circuits in UK.
I've been very cold. I've been really very cold.
So that tells about the passion of the guy here. And by hanging out there, he became a mechanic. So he was taking care of a car, of an owner. But when he could get his hands on the car and drive the car, he was faster than the owner. So he got to drive for a full year in Formula 4 2000. And it happened to be the same year that a certain Ayrton Senna was driving as well. And of course, compared to this famous driver, his results were not that good. And the following year, he decided to get back to Belgium and to start a real work.
Well, there was no choice, there was no money to continue. So.
Exactly. That's as well the beginning of the story, because then Dirk got to work for Nissan, that was just starting the technical center near Brussels. 82, Formula 4 2000.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting story, I think.
Yes.
Like Antonio said, I was living in a van. I was working on a Formula 4 car for a certain John Bartlett is his name. And he was a guy that could talk very well, so he convinced, first of all, the MSA, which is the Motorsports Association in England, to give me a license to do that, because normally you can't get that straight away, but he was so persuasive that we could get it, so I could do some races. We got launched in Formula 4 2000, and indeed it was the year that Ayrton Senna was doing that, and he won, I believe, 15 out of 17 races. So I cannot say that I was racing Ayrton Senna because I could not follow him. It's that simple, and why should I be embarrassed to say that? Who can follow Senna? But what I have been able to see is that he was absolutely perfect. So in practice he would pass me, or sometimes the last lap of the race as well. So you would see that, and I would sign him through, and then he would come and say thanks. So he was like a nice guy, and you can always follow him for a number of corners, so you can see the driving style, and it was absolutely perfect. Unbelievable what he could do. So we knew at the time that he was a great driver, yeah.
I see that in '87 you started at Nissan. Maybe you make just a little comment on how you got to go there.
Well, very simply, I got an ad from a newspaper from somebody, and it said, Japanese car manufacturer is looking for a car fanatic. So I didn't know who it was. And then I saw the list with the qualifications they wanted. I had none of that. So I thought, but let's try it, you never know. And so I got a job, and later on I asked my Japanese boss, why did you take me? And one of the reasons was that I could talk about cars in English. That's what I had learned in Formula 4 in England. So there were other people better qualified than I was, but I couldn't talk about cars. So that's why I got the job, and that has changed my life, in fact, because that's where I learned about cars, how to tune them, how to understand them, and then from there it developed further. Yeah.
Nice story. So that brings us to the first red box, which is first race in GT-R.
Yes, well, just 2 words about this interprovincial championship in the 300 ZX. Of course, I was crazy about motor racing, so I went to see my boss and I asked him, so what happens to the old test cars? They did not send these back to Japan because that was very expensive. So they had to be destroyed, literally, which is so sad. Yeah, but how much time do you have before you have to destroy it? Because then you have to send documents to the customs to give evidence. And that was 2 years, and I said, oh, can I please use the cars before you throw them away? So I used the old test cars to do some racing and to have some practice. And then I heard that in year 90, the factory would come with the Skyline R32 to do the Spa 24 hours. You know, Nissan, still today, I'm afraid it's a bit of a grey brown. it hasn't got so much image, and that's why they wanted to do that in Europe. And then of course I talked to the people to try and get a drive. They thought it was okay, so I got to drive in my first 24 hours in Spa in a factory Group 8 car. So the top 3 placings were Skylines GT-R, but we were only third, so that's not so good. But we had the experience and we went back the next year, as you see.
Then comes the R33, which is the following generation that we will look at further in the presentation.
This is where racing got a bit more serious for me, because there was a Japanese tire brand, Falcon, which is part of Sumitomo. And for their marketing, they wanted to do the Nurburgring 24 hours. And they had a car from the Japanese championship, which was an R33. And they had, of course, strong links to Nissan. So they asked in Japan, how to get there. And they came to the technical center where I was working, and I was sent with them to the Nurburgring to introduce those people. And of course I said, if you need a driver, here I am. So I got to drive, and that was a nice race, because we got 6th overall in the R33. That was the only R33 entry in that race, and after that it was the R34.
But you had already quite good experience in the Nurburgring, right?
Yes, because of testing I had done a lot of laps, which is an advantage, because it takes some time to learn it and not to destroy the car in any condition, to go through the night, or when it is raining, you need to know the place well. And so that's how, we got, there were some, we were 3, I believe, on the car, or 4, I can't remember, but at least 2 of the Japanese were very good. They knew the ring as well, because they had done some testing for Japanese manufacturers. So we were quite a good team,
And actually, one of the reasons why you knew very well the ring was because of your work for Nissan, right? Because you were testing cars there regularly.
Yes, this is a long time after testing the Skylines, and indeed we were there a number of weeks every year to drive the normal cars.
And well, I see that in 2000 the Nissan story as a profession ended, because, if I'm correct, the technical center moved to UK.
Not really. That means the technical center consisted of 2 offices. That was the UK, indeed, where there's a factory where they used to make the Primera, close to Newcastle, Sunderland. And our office in Brussels, but Nissan was not doing well. They needed help. They got help from Renault. And then Mr. Carlos Ghosn came in, the famous Carlos Ghosn. And he has a nickname, which is Cost Killer. So he more or less closed down the office in Brussels. That means 60 people out of 70 were made redundant, and only 10 were left in a small department. They were good with everybody. They were offered another job, or we could go to Renault in France. But at that time I thought this is the right time for me to try and start as a freelance. And I created my little company, which is Topline. And from there on, I could continue my work also with them for another 10 years on the GT-R.
Good. And so that brings us to the R34. That's why as well. So you kept in touch with Nissan, and that's why you were able to continue racing on the R34, but as well thanks to a tire manufacturer, right?
Yes, that was completely in hands of Falcon, but as it went well the first time. The second time, actually, also because we were 3rd in the morning after 2/3 into the race. And after that, because of the link with Nissan, they used the R34. They wanted to use an exotic car, not another Porsche, because there were already 30 Porsches in the race, so to say. So they wanted to have an exotic car to draw the attention to them. And then we drove 5 times the same car, the R34, in the race.
Tell us through this event, and as well with the green box. I think it's quite interesting.
But the 5 participations with the 34 were a bit special, because they were very ambitious, and they brought in Hasemi, Mr. Hasemi, who is one of the top drivers at the time in Japan. There was Hoshino and Hasemi. But Hasemi-san didn't know the track, and he was going above his limits, and he went off and destroyed the car more or less. So that didn't work. After that came Roland Ash, who is a DTM winner. He was a great driver, so that was an asset for the team. And then we have in 2005 my biggest disappointment, let's say, because also two-thirds into the race we were second overall in between the two works BMWs. The suspension broke. A little bolt, maybe 15 cents the value, and it broke because they had never replaced it. So I turned left and the car went right, which is a strange experience. And so that was the end of that car. And that meant in 2006 they didn't do anything, Falcon and Nissan. And then I got a chance to drive a cup car, which I did, and then we were first in class, fourth overall. So that was a quite a good race without any trouble. And after that, as you see, Falcon came back with a Nissan 350Z, which was a nice car, but it was not a car to win the race. It was not strong enough.